Ciao a tutti, benvenuti a Milano! Hey guys, so today I'm going to be bringing you some interesting info because I know a lot of you guys are learning English as a second language, so you want to learn common mistakes that people who speak your language make in English, but you don't usually see mistakes that English speakers make in English. So here's the thing, if you watch this video and you don't make these mistakes, or if you watch the video and you find out you make the mistakes but you change it so that you don't make the mistakes anymore, you speak English better than at least half of the American population. Okay, obviously I'm exaggerating, I have no idea what the statistics are, but in my opinion, a lot of people make these mistakes in America and they don't even know that they're mistakes. That's the thing. If they were told, they'd probably be surprised because it's just like spoken language versus written language. But yeah, I'm excited to share this with you, so let me know if you're surprised by any of these in the comments. So, with that, let's get started. Disclaimer, Americans don't hate me. I'm not saying I'm like the grammar queen or anything, but I do really like grammar, so that's why I took the time to like really notice these were common mistakes people make. Now I'm gonna feel all self-conscious when I make these mistakes in my videos in the future, and I told everyone not to make them, but yeah, hopefully I won't make them. Mistake number one, there is versus there are. So, if I say, there is a supermarket next to my house, there's only one of them, so I use there is. But if I say, there are two people on the street in front of me, then that's because there are two, so you have to say are. So make sure you choose if it's is or are correctly. A lot of Americans say, there's two people over there, because it's just easier to make that contraction. But if you say there are, like there are, it's just very uncomfortable and you don't like to say it, so you prefer to say theirs. But yeah, sorry, I hate to break it to you, but you have to say the correct verb with the object. Secondly, adverb usage. So just a quick refresher, an adverb is a word that describes an adjective, other adverb, or a verb. And a lot of people just use adjectives to describe verbs. For example, I ran really quick to the school. That's saying that you should be saying that you ran quickly, because the word quickly modifies ran. But it's actually not that complicated. You just know that every time you say a verb and you want to describe the verb, you have to use an adverb. So, unless it's a linking verb, but yeah, don't worry about that. Basically, if I say, I'm eating loud, doesn't make any sense. I'm eating loudly is correct. And actually, this rule is kind of easy to follow because usually if you add ly to the end of an adjective, it's going to be an adverb automatically, so that's pretty helpful. There are obviously irregulars, but that's like the common rule you can follow to make sure you're doing it correctly. So yeah, just use it. Make sure you're doing it correctly. Not make sure you're doing it correct, but make sure you're doing it correctly. Who versus whom? Honestly, a lot of people don't even learn the difference in school because it's kind of complicated unless you know the specific grammatical terms of grammar in general. However, the difference is quite simple if you use this rule of thumb. So this is something I kind of like thought of on my own, so I hope that it helps you. Basically, if you can replace him or her with what you're talking about, then it would be whom. But if you can replace it with he or she, it would be who. For example, blank are you speaking with? So can you replace it with him? Yes, you can say I'm speaking with him, but you cannot say I'm speaking with he. That makes no sense. So therefore you would say whom. So you would say whom are you speaking with? On the other hand, if you're talking about this, for example, who is your best friend? It would be who, because you could say he is my best friend or she is my best friend, but you cannot say him is my best friend. So if you like grammar, then I'm going to say this, that if it's a subject, it's going to be who. If it's an object, it's going to be whom. But if you don't know grammar that way, don't worry about it, don't get confused, just go with the rule that I told you. It really helps for the most part. Next up is something called subjunctive, and Americans do not learn subjunctive because we barely have it in English, but one place it's really important is when you use it in the past tense. If you want to say, for example, if I were a doctor, I would travel around the world curing children. You would say if I were instead of if I was. But a lot of Americans say if I was a doctor, and I don't really know why. I guess because we don't really learn subjunctive, we don't learn that's incorrect. But the correct way to say it would be were. Also, it applies for third person singular, because usually you would say if he was a doctor, then he would cure people. But instead it would be if he were a doctor. So it only applies for the first person singular and third person singular. Or if you don't like grammar, then don't worry about that. It applies for the I and the he or she. So now you know. And subjunctive, if you don't know what it is, don't worry, don't even bother to learn it. It's kind of confusing. But if you like grammar, I'll explain it to you. It's a mood of grammar, and it is used when there's uncertainty. So if if something is not real. For example, if I say, if I were a doctor, it's not true because I'm not a doctor. I can't say I was a doctor because it doesn't make any sense. I never was a doctor in the past. Or you can also say, actually, I was about to use it. I could say, if I were to say this example. Not because if I was to say it, because I didn't already say it. So, yeah, hope that makes sense. It's kind of confusing, but if you have questions, just leave the questions down below and I can answer them for you. This is a common misconception in American English. A lot of people think split infinitives are not allowed. What that means is people think you can't say, for example, I am able to quickly run. I mean, it sounds weird, but you are allowed to say it. Yes, the Romance languages have infinitives that are conjoined. So the words to and run would be one verb in other languages, like in French or Spanish or Romanian, Italian, etc. But in English, you can separate the words, so that's good. But what a lot of people say is that you have to keep the to and the verb together, but it's not true. You can easily separate them and it's completely allowed. Misplaced modifiers and dangling participles. Okay, this sounds completely insane if you didn't take like a grammar class. Once again, I'm sorry for making this initially confusing, but basically what this means is people sometimes use phrases the wrong way in sentences. So if you want to say, running from the yard, the dog was insane. So you can say this because running from the yard as a phrase modifies or describes, in a way, the dog. And the dog is the thing that comes after this phrase. But if you say, the dog was in the yard insane, and you said that as a sentence, it wouldn't make any sense because the dog is in the beginning of the sentence and the yard is at the end of the sentence, and you said insane at the end of the sentence. So you'd be saying that the yard is insane, not the dog. But you could say, on the other hand, insane, comma, the dog was in the yard. That would make sense because the dog is being described. So I know a lot of people don't know that that's wrong because it's not necessarily always taught, like it is in some English classes in school, but it's not taught in all of them. That's the misplaced modifier. But the dangling participle is when there's a phrase like that that does not even modify anything. So let me think of an example. So a participle is a word, it's a verb that ends in ing, but there are also gerunds, but don't worry about those, they're totally irrelevant for now. But basically, participles are, for example, if I said, living life, I moved to Italy, like living life would be a participial phrase and the participle would be living. And it all describes me because I am the one in the sentence. Living life, I moved to Italy. So yeah. Where people go wrong sometimes is they use these phrases to describe themselves or someone else when the subject is actually not in the sentence. So if I said, living life, Italy was beautiful, it doesn't make any sense because you would have to say, living life, I saw that Italy was beautiful, or living life, the girl hiked to the top of the mountain, something like that. You can't just say like, living life, comma, Italy was beautiful, because you'd be assuming that Italy's living life, but Italy cannot live life because Italy's a country. So a lot of people don't really realize that you can't do this grammatically because it's spoken a lot, and it seems like something that would make sense to do, but it doesn't. So yeah, it's kind of confusing, but I hope it makes sense. This one is super common, using they instead of he or she. So in the third person singular of the English language, or if you don't like grammar, ignore that, but basically if you say he went to the park or she went to the park, sometimes if people don't know if a person was a boy or a girl, the person would say they instead of he or she. So I don't know who that person is, but I saw them the other day. That is a very common mistake. And honestly, I wish that were allowed because it's kind of annoying in the English language. In Romance languages, as you might know if you speak one, you don't have to use the subject for every sentence, you can just use the verb, and the verb is conjugated, so you know whom you're talking about, but oftentimes you don't know which person you're talking about, so you have to use the word they. Honestly, I'm not even gonna lie, this is not a rule that I always follow because I think it's stupid how the English language does not provide an alternative to this problem. Because honestly, like, nowadays there are transgenders in the society and it's very open to be transgender and it's totally okay. I'm cool with transgenders, why not? But if you don't know if the person is a boy or a girl, it's rude just to say he or she, and that's completely not okay. You need to have some kind of alternative, so that's why you say they instead. And honestly, I didn't even know this rule was wrong until I got to English class in 9th grade. My teacher told me about it, and it was like her biggest pet peeve ever. And I want to respect her in a way because I really love her and I love how she gave us so many great grammar tips, but I just don't like this rule. It bothers me. So I'm going to say they for Pete's sake because it's much easier. I tried going with this rule to help you guys learn English better when I was first starting to make videos, but then I kind of just like bailed because it's not even a good rule. It's only good with written language, but with spoken language, I think it's okay to say they, pretty much, to like your friends. Because if you say it in a professional setting, actually, I don't know, I wouldn't say it in a professional setting because you never know, the person might have studied grammar or something. But if you're talking with your friends or your family, definitely say they. Because if you say he or she, it makes you sound kind of proper in an awkward way. I don't know, that's how I feel, but you can do what you want. You can be a rebel if you want to and say that he or she, but it's up to you. This is very, very, very minor, but I honestly didn't even know this was wrong until 11th grade because I heard a French person speaking English and she corrected herself, and then I learned this and I looked it up and then it was like, whoa, what? It's a rule? So if you're trying to describe a person, you say a person who loves horses. I'm looking for a person who loves horses. You have to say who. You cannot say a person that loves horses. But so many Americans say it with that because we just think it's right. But on the other hand, if you say with an object or a place or other kind of noun that's not a person, like I really want to find a house that has a balcony. You would not say who, obviously, because it's not a person. But people think just because that's the rule, it's also that with people. So I want to find a person that speaks 2 languages. No, it'd be a person who speaks 2 languages. And yeah, that was kind of minor, but very, very, very important. Next up, punctuation. So a lot of people don't know the difference between a dash and a hyphen. They don't know how to use colons. They don't know how to use semicolons. So I'll tell you all of them briefly. Basically, I'll start with a dash. A dash is used when you're trying to separate clauses. So if you want to say, for example, that restaurant had it all. Dash. Eggs, waffles, bacon. Yeah, that would make sense because you're trying to separate all of the things that the restaurant has from the restaurant itself. If you want to link 2 words, though, that are very similar, you would use the hyphen. So in this case, you would say, I'm going to be honest, I cannot think of any examples for this one off the top of my head, so I'm going to use random words from the internet. Rock forming. If it forms rocks, it's rock forming. So you would use rock hyphen forming, but you would not use rock dash forming. And the difference is when you're typing it on the keyboard, you see like a little dash on the keyboard, and 1 dash is a hyphen, 2 of them is a dash. So yeah, it's something people don't really know. Also, mother-in-law, mother hyphen in hyphen law. If you want to say I worked at an off-campus housing company, it would be off hyphen campus. It wouldn't just be off space campus because you don't know if the off would modify the campus or the housing or the company. It's just too confusing. So off hyphen campus. I just realized, like, do other languages have hyphens or is it just the English language? Like, I think French has them, but I don't even know how they're used. Anyways, let me know because I am curious about that. Then we have colons and semicolons. Colons are used to separate clauses. For example, today I forgot to bring everything, colon. My calculator, my pens, and my pencils. And you would use a colon because you're trying to find things to describe everything. And everything would be the things I listed. The calculator, the pens, and the pencils. But if you want to use a semicolon, it's used to separate 2 dependent clauses. Only dependent clauses, nothing else. Sometimes people think colons and semicolons are the same thing, and this makes me want to cry because they're not. They're just different, okay? Like, when you use them as emojis, are they the same thing? No. One of them means laughing / crying, and the other one means just a regular face. And also, the other one means winking. So, one of them means laughing / crying / winking, the other one's just regular face, so do not confuse them with grammar either, okay? Okay, thank you very much. So an example of this would be, for example, I'm gonna go to the park, semicolon. I might see you there. Because, you know, they're two different sentences that go together. Oh, by the way, an independent clause is a clause that could be alone. So you could just write a sentence out of it and it'd be fine. You can't write a sentence out of dependent clauses though. For example, I love it because it's awesome. You can make a sentence out of I love it, but you cannot say because it's awesome on its own. It doesn't make any sense. So therefore, I love it is an independent clause, and the dependent clause would be because it's awesome. So if you were to say I love it, you could link it together with it is awesome with a semicolon. But if you want to do anything else, it wouldn't work out. So yeah, it's tricky, I know. All this punctuation stuff is crazy. And I'm pretty sure the English language is the only one that has this many crazy punctuation rules, but I don't know. I'm not very knowledgeable with languages besides the Romance languages, so yeah, hit me up with info about that. I'm curious to see how other languages use punctuation. Wow, I'm such a nerd. Of course I'm wondering how other languages use punctuation. But yeah, let me know. I'm curious. Last but not least, past participles. So, a lot of Americans don't know the difference between the past tense and the past participle because a lot of the times they're the same, but sometimes they're irregulars and people don't always notice them and they don't notice that you have to say the past participle. So in case you think this is all gibberish, the past tense is, for example, I went to the park, but the past participle would be I have gone to the park. But a lot of Americans would say I have went to the park because they don't know that it's wrong. And I'm saying this because I've heard this so many times in my school, in life, when I worked as a cashier. A lot of people told me this when they were in line. Yeah, that's a really common verb that's misused too. Some other common ones are broke and broken. People would say I have broke many things before, but it would be I have broken many things. Also, become and became, chose and chosen, ate and eaten. That one's so common. I have ate so many crazy foods in my life. No, I have eaten so many crazy foods in my life. Also, wrote and written. I should have wrote down this information so I could remember it. No, I should have written it down. And the most common one that's misused because no one knows this is true, I swear, I think I'm like the only one. If you say the past participle of the word to drink. So for example, I drink hot chocolate when it's cold outside. You would say I drink, or when I was a child, I drank hot chocolate when it was cold outside. Or, one of these days in the past, I forget which one, but I have drunk hot chocolate. You cannot say I have drank hot chocolate, but everyone, I think most of my friends think it's drank because they think it's weird to say drunk because drunk means, you know, drunk. It means that you have had too much alcohol to drink. But drunk is also the past participle and it's inevitable that you have to use it, so it's kind of funny. And it actually sounds funny when I say this because a lot of people who are in my university actually don't know about this either. So when I say, oh, I've drunk that before, they're like, wait, you got drunk off of this before? And I was like, no, lemonade cannot make you drunk, or like milk cannot make you drunk. And they're like, wait, so what do you mean then? I'm just like, no, I have drunk it before. And they're like, oh, okay, it makes sense. So I think that's so cute. That's like so funny. People think that it means like drunk all the time. But yeah, honestly, I think even in TV shows, they say, I have drank it before. And like, it's not really a case that arises often because usually it's like, you would just say I drank instead of I have drank. So that's why people don't really know that it's wrong, but yeah. I think it's so funny. I just love that one so much. Once again, just for clarification, I am not saying I'm like the best at grammar or that I'm like some kind of knowledgeable figure when it comes to grammar. But yeah, I hope this does help you. The reason I made this video is not to be like snobby or something like that. It's just because I like grammar, I think it's fun. So I want to share some interesting facts with you and maybe help you with your English learning. Like seriously, sometimes I make these mistakes too. Like usually I'm aware of them when I'm speaking slowly and I correct myself, but if I'm speaking quickly then I usually sometimes forget. And if I'm writing, I always know the difference because it bothers me if I write something incorrectly because I don't know, I'm just very keen on grammar. But yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I certainly did. Leave a comment down below if you were surprised by anything or if you have any more crazy things that people always get wrong. Also, if English was your second language, then please comment below with the mistakes that you always make in English, because I love hearing about this. It's just so fun. I just love languages, so yeah. And also, if you speak English and you're learning, or even if you speak another language and you're trying to learn a second language and you always make a mistake, please let me know which mistakes you make, because yeah, once again, I just like love this kind of stuff. So yeah. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, guys. Make sure you follow, subscribe, like, comment, follow us on social media. We have an official account and we each have our personal accounts, Jency and I do, so yeah, feel free to just follow them for days in our lives, and also info about university, Italy, LA, etc. So yeah, love you guys so much. Have a great week, and I'll see you next Monday. Ciao. Mwah.